Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to my session on organic and content-driven user acquisition in a product-led world. Before we jump into today's topic, just a brief introduction about myself. So Edward Ford, marketing director at Supermetrics, and that is a B2B SaaS company based in Helsinki, Finland. Prior to that, I was a marketing strategist at Advanced B2B, a growth marketing agency, also based in Helsinki, Finland, specialized in working with B2B SaaS companies in particular. And I'm also host of the Growth Hub podcast, which is a podcast dedicated purely to growth marketing within the B2B SaaS space. So if you haven't checked that out or heard of it, then you should definitely go and have a listen once you've checked out all the other sessions from the product-led summit. So that's a bit about me and about the session. So three objectives really. Firstly, it's about understanding the role of content marketing and organic user acquisition in a product-led approach to growth. Secondly, we want to combine some simple strategic and tactical frameworks that will help you get started with content marketing and thinking about SEO. So we want it to be quite actionable, and hopefully you'll have some good takeaways that you can go and play around with and experiment with after this session. And then thirdly, just finishing off with a short summary about how you can build your own simple one-page content marketing strategy for a product-led approach to growth. So they're the three key objectives for today's session. So let's look into that first point. So what is the role of content marketing and organic acquisition in product-led growth? And really at the heart of product-led growth is the product itself. So the product acts as the primary driver of growth and of future user acquisition. But in addition to the product, you have supporting acquisition channels. So of course you can use paid acquisition to drive new users. You can leverage your social networks. You can use referrals, backlinks, and so forth. And of course, organic. So people are going to be searching for products and solutions, and you want to make sure that you're going to be found. But regardless as to which of these supporting acquisition channels you actually use, at the heart of that is content. So you can't run successful paid acquisition, you can't run a successful social strategy, you can't benefit from referrals and backlinks, and you can't acquire users through organic channels without content itself. So that acts as the hub of all this acquisition. But a question that is often brought up, and that is, well, why can't I just use paid acquisition to drive traffic? And I want to take a moment to look at this before we dig in any further. And paid acquisition is good. And this is definitely not a case of things being mutually exclusive. So you can't just do paid acquisition or focus on organic acquisition through content marketing. You can do them at the same time, but paid acquisition in many ways is like renting an apartment, and organic acquisition is like buying your own place. So both of them have pros and cons, but in the long run, one is slightly more sustainable. So renting is a lot like paid acquisition. So you're paying the real-time market price. Someone might outbid you or be willing to pay more. You only stay in that apartment as long as you keep paying money, if you keep paying rent. If you can't pay rent, then you're thrown out or you lose your position. And ultimately, you're not owning your property. So you're essentially renting off a landlord, and the same way you're renting an audience that Google has built through its search products. But buying a place, that is like organic traffic. So you're investing for the long term, and those returns will compound over time. So you put some effort and money in now, it's going to return over time in the long run. And the other good thing is that you're in greater control of your destiny. So you actually own the content that you're creating, and you're helping to build and own an audience yourself, rather than just renting an audience that Google has built. So these are two things to keep in mind when you're thinking about paid acquisition and organic traffic. And this is why focusing on organic is so important in the long run. So you want to identify additional acquisition channels to feed into your product-led growth model, and you really want to be thinking organic first. So let's dig into content marketing and SEO within product-led growth. And despite what I just said, thinking organic, what you don't want to fall into the trap of is actually building an audience. So think organic, but having said that, don't build an audience. And this might sound a little contradictory, but when it comes to content marketing, there are really two schools of thought. So there is content as a publication, and then there is content as a library. And I think marketers typically default to content as a publication when they start thinking about content marketing and building a content marketing strategy, in that you operate your content like a publication, like a newspaper, like a magazine, which you send out to your readers on a subscription basis. And while that does work, it is better suited to certain situations. So where you have longer buying cycles, for example, then a publication approach works quite well so that you can build a relationship with your buyer. Typically, it's problem driven. So someone has a problem, they're not sure what the solution is, and they're going to be looking for possible ways to solve the problem that they have. Publication thinking ties very nicely with thought leadership and brand marketing as well. So you can really position yourself as a thought leader within the space you're operating, but you immediately start bringing in mechanic problems or challenges that you have as a SaaS business itself. So firstly, you need to acquire new readers, but then you also need to retain those existing readers. So it, in a way, becomes its own mini SaaS business model. And with the publication approach, you're typically pushing content to readers. So when you have something new, you will share it with your audience, with your newsletter subscribers, with your podcast subscribers, and so forth. But on the other hand, we have content as a library. And this works very well with short user cycles and is typically solution driven. So people are aware of a problem and they have identified a solution, and now they're looking for the best solution out there, in the same way that people might go to the library knowing what they want to check out in advance. Whereas publication thinking ties in very nicely with thought leadership. This is library thinking is a great way to work on demand and lead gen. And rather than acquiring and retaining readers, it's about helping users. And in the same way, a library draws people to itself so that they can come and check out books. Content as a library is really about attracting users to content rather than pushing content to readers. And if we take a couple of companies as an example, so I mentioned I was previously working at Advanced B2B, which is a marketing agency specialized in working with SaaS companies and focusing on growth marketing. And if we take Calendly, which is a SaaS company that fits in very well to the product-led growth model, from a content strategy perspective, I would lean that Advanced B2B is more of a publication and Calendly is much better suited to a library. And we can just take an example of the two to see how this works in practice. So Advanced B2B, a common problem that people might be searching for in Google is a B2B SaaS go-to-market strategy. So for early stage SaaS companies trying to figure out their go-to-market strategy and they're not exactly sure how to go about it, this is a term that they would put into Google. On the other hand, for Calendly, if you're thinking about a way to schedule meetings that is simple and super easy, then you're going to type this into Google and hopefully you will find Calendly. So people already are aware of a solution that they might be looking for. And how this plays out in a Google search. So if we take Advanced B2B first, so B2B SaaS go-to-market strategy, what happens is that you will find an article that we wrote about how to build the ultimate B2B SaaS go-to-market strategy called the Mission Matrix. And this is bringing in a ton of organic traffic every month. And it's a relatively long form article. It goes into great detail about different go-to-market strategies SaaS companies have. And once you've scrolled through to the bottom, it's about a 20, 30-minute read. Then you're invited to maybe subscribe to the Growth Up podcast or join Advanced Insider, the newsletter. And this article is drawing perhaps more early stage SaaS companies than Advanced B2B would want to be selling to. But at the same time, those companies will grow. And hopefully when they're in a stage to scale up and accelerate their marketing, then they will already have a relationship with Advanced B2B through this publication type approach to content marketing. But Calendly, on the other hand, if someone's searching for best meeting scheduler, you want to make sure that you're visible and found on page one of Google. So you can see that there's an article listing some apps and tools to improve your productivity. Calendly is mentioned there. Then at the bottom, you're also finding Calendly. So really it's about getting people onto your website. And then it's just a case of conversion rate optimization and letting your website take care of the rest. So really, your product-led growth content marketing strategy should be to build a library of resources that people can find when they need a solution to their problem. And I think it's nothing really more complex than that. It's quite simple, it's quite straightforward. And I think the simpler you can make things, the easier it is when it comes to content marketing and SEO and trying to get a handle on all these things. But the next question, who should I write for? And what's important to understand in a product-led approach to growth is that you have two different types of people that you're addressing. So you have users and then you have buyers, since the user in many cases might not necessarily be the buyer. So we can see here in this picture that we have one person who is going to be buying and one person who's probably going to be using most of these toys in the picture, i.e. the parent and the kid. And this is good to keep in mind because in marketing, we're so obsessed with buyer personas and defaulting to creating and documenting buyer personas, which is definitely not a bad thing, that's for sure. But that is, I think, more aligned with the publication approach. So for example, at Advanced B2B, you'd want to develop really good buyer personas and conduct custom interviews, identify their challenges and goals, map the buying journey, and build buyer personas so that you can really address those people in the content that you're creating. But with a product-led approach to growth, most likely you want to focus on the user. So who's having this problem and who can we target with our content? So think about the user, conduct user interviews. Instead of focusing on wider challenges and goals, just figure out what is the job to be done? What is the job that your product does for the user? And then in many cases, the user might not actually be the buyer. So you need to map their role in the buying process and figure out what happens when people start using the product. How are they actually going to then influence the buying process? And focus on building user personas. So some really, really good questions that you can ask when you're conducting this research are the following. So we can break them down into three parts. So really background, the use, and then the impact. So a background is good just to get an overview of users' main responsibilities in their work, how they measure success, big challenges that they have. And then this is where you get the real interesting stuff in the next section. So how were you doing this job before you were actually using our product? And then this next question is where you get the best insight. So what was going on that compelled you to look for something different? So what was the trigger? When did you actually decide that this is enough? I need to take action and I need to start looking for a new solution. And as soon as you can start to understand that, then you can start building great marketing content and you can actually address those needs and address that pain point with everything you do in marketing. Then you can figure out, how did you find out about us? Why did you start using the product? Did you buy? Why not? What was your role in the buying process? And then once they had started using the product, what was the actual impact that it had on their everyday life? And this is where you get really, really good insights into benefits and can really help you shape your value proposition. And then a really good question to ask when you're conducting interviews is, any final thoughts or anything to add? And you'll be amazed at some of the answers you get and some of the really, really valuable insights. So this is, I think, a set of questions that you can take away and use as a starting point when conducting interviews. Okay, so recap. I should build a library of content to help my users, but how should I go about creating content optimized for organic traffic? And there are many ways you can go about this, and there's no right or wrong way necessarily, but I'm going to provide one option for you to go away and think about. And this is the topic cluster model, sometimes referred to as hub and spoke, as a way to actually take that strategy into practice. So just briefly about why the topic cluster approach. So to acquire organic traffic, you really want to be publishing a consistent stream of high quality content about a limited number of topics. And there are two very important benefits of the topic cluster model. So firstly, it's going to help you increase long-term organic traffic to your website and also increase brand awareness among your desired target audience for the field within which you're operating. So two super, super important benefits. And to give an example of how it works, HubSpot, I think, were really one of the pioneers of this model. And the old way in which HubSpot organized and created content is that they would have three separate blogs, one for marketers, one for sales teams, and one for agencies. And they would write about the same topics for those different audiences, but there was no real connection. So what they did, instead of focusing on different streams, they focused on topics. So they organized everything by topics. So if they were talking about product marketing, they would talk about what that means in terms of a sales team, a marketing team, and for agencies. And the same thing with all the other topics that they were writing about. So this is the new way, the smart way. And if we take a very basic example, so if you wanted to build a topic cluster around, say, workout routines, then you could create content about workout routines in general that would act as the pillar or the hub of the topic cluster. And then the spokes would be smaller content pieces about a specific workout routine, whether it's to increase strength, lose fat, build lean muscle, etc. You can see the examples here. And together they form a topic cluster. So there are many benefits to this approach. And I think that many companies are using this approach, but there's a really good opportunity to jump on this early on and get a firm foothold on key topics in areas before other companies start doing the same. And the old approach to SEO was really built around keyword and keyword stuffing. And the great thing about the topic cluster framework is that it forces prioritization. So you can't own every keyword, but you can own a couple of high level topics. Again, in line with the library approach to content marketing, cluster content is evergreen. So instead of writing something that is topical or time-based, it should be evergreen, everlasting, and always relevant so that it is consistently bringing in organic traffic. And then also getting authority on specific topics helps customers form a connection with you, with your brand, and it helps to help them understand what it is you actually do and which areas you're really a specialist in. So let's take one example of a company that we were working with called Housespace, and their product fits very well with the product-led approach to growth. It's essentially a platform for change consultants, for learning and development professionals, and facilitators to manage all their projects in one space. So they can invite people who they're working with to collaborate in real time on the Housespace platform to deliver impactful change initiatives and change projects. And of course, when a consultant is setting up, for example, a workspace in Housespace, they're going to be inviting hundreds, if not thousands of people into that workspace to collaborate. And then some of them, people themselves, may set up their own workspace and so forth and so forth. So it's really a good fit with the product-led approach to growth. And what we wanted to do was build some topic clusters around key topics within their field. And really at the heart of Housespace is digital facilitation. I think at its core, it's a digital facilitation platform, which is a relatively up-and-coming term within the field that Housespace is operating. And so we started out by building a pillar page. That's at the heart of the topic cluster model. So it was the ultimate guide to digital facilitation. And you can see here the different sections of that actual page. So it started off by explaining what is digital facilitation, how you can become a better digital facilitator, different approaches to digital facilitation, the benefits, tips and tricks, tools, technologies, and so forth, and then links to additional reading and resources. And it's quite a long page. You can see here the first part with the definitions, and then eventually when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's going to be links to the subtopics within that cluster so that you're interlinking between all the content, but really this pillar page acts as the hub of that topic cluster. And what happened is that very quickly after launching this, when you search digital facilitation in Google, Housespace was found. So when we started, the company in third position, digitalfacilitation.net, they were dominating all search terms around digital facilitation. But within a month and a half after launching this pillar page, we saw some super good results. So you can see there that Housespace was found. If you typed what is digital facilitation, you actually got the featured snippet on the SERP page, and then the remaining pages as well, also from Housespace. So dominating some good search terms here. And then also if you're looking for digital facilitation tools, so if you're having a very solution-driven search, then again, you will find Housespace. So a really good example of what happens when you take into use the topic cluster approach. And what we notice with our organic search is that this is a relatively niche field and there aren't huge volumes of searches, which is also not necessarily a bad thing. But we saw that within 10 months, we grew organic sessions per month from 250 to over 1,250. But more importantly, we noticed that we had a 9.24% conversion rate from organic contacts to customers. So basically what that meant is that we knew that for every 10 new contacts we could drive from organic sources, one would go on to become a customer. So a super, super good channel for Housebase when it came to new customer acquisition. So let's take an example and let's jump back to Calendly. So say if we were assigned to come up with a content marketing strategy for Calendly and we were going to push the topic cluster model, and this is something that we could do. So Calendly could create topic clusters around the following 3 topics. So calendar management, workplace productivity, and time management. So let's take calendar management as an example. So if we were going to build out a topic cluster for calendar management, what you can do is go to keywordtool.io. So this is where it gets quite tactical, so you can take some notes. So go to keywordtool.io and just type in calendar management, and then you get a return of lots of different search terms and unique keywords. Then in the bottom right, you can copy and export this entire list into Google Keyword Planner. So here, once you've done that, you can see that it's going to show which terms are getting the most monthly searches. And we can scroll down and think which of these look quite relevant. So calendar management itself is getting around 1,300 average monthly searches. Calendar management in Outlook, calendar management tools, how to manage multiple calendars, and so forth, calendar management tips. So really good insights into search terms people are using around calendar management. And what you can do is then put these together in a list. So some of the most relevant keywords that people are searching for Calendly could be calendar management, app skills, skills for executive assistants, tips, tools in Outlook, team calendar management, management meetings, how to manage multiple calendars. And we can see that already within this cluster, there are over 2,000 average monthly searches. So what we could do is take these and come up with a name for a pillar page and supporting content pieces. So we could create calendar management, the ultimate guide to being less busy, more productive, and winning back your time. And then there could be supporting content pieces around top calendar management apps, how to effectively manage your calendar, tips for executive assistants, the best calendar management tools according to G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, Capterra, and we could start building a topic cluster around this. And this was just an example of how you could actually go about it so that you could think about this for your own companies. But really, when you're coming up with themes, you really need to make sure that they check the following boxes. So firstly, the target audience is interested in it. Otherwise, of course, it's a total waste of time. So this is where your customer research and interviews are so important. The theme is consistent with your offering, yes. And then, of course, that it's close enough to the business to make the connection seem natural. But also, you need to ensure that the theme is broad enough to allow around 8 standalone cluster pieces. This is typically a good number when it comes to building out a topic cluster. So you would have your main pillar page and then around 7, 8, or 9 supporting cluster pieces as well. So these are important to keep in mind. So then the third part, how can we actually tie this together and create a very simple and short content marketing strategy? And really, in its most simple form, you can make a content strategy that essentially answers these 5 questions. So this is the 5-point content strategy, and this is something Jimmy Daly from Animals has talked about on his blog. And it's a super simple way just to answer some questions and put together a content marketing strategy. So it's who will you write for, what will you write about, when will you publish, how will you earn traffic, and how will you support the business. So if we put a few answers here, when it comes to a product-led approach to growth, who will you write for? You want to conduct interviews and develop those user personas and really get as good an understanding as possible of the people who are using your product and going to be searching for it. Then to start off, you could think about 3 topic clusters. Just think about 3 topics that you could actually start building, and you could even start with one as a test and focus on that first before expanding into additional topics. When will you publish? Again, find what works for you. Don't tie yourself into the publication thinking in that, oh, I need to publish 2 blogs per week. I need to send out my weekly newsletter on Friday. Remember, if you're thinking about building a library, you're not defined by time. You're not time bound. It's really about what works for you, what fits with your schedule. And that's really the way to go here. And then how will you earn traffic? So of course, we want to be driving organic traffic to the website so that we can get new users who can then feed into that product-led growth model. And I think thinking hub and spoke is a simple way to go about this. And then how will you support the business? So this is where you need to think about the user journey and the buyer's journey, and how do people then actually go from your content to the product itself. So in summary, we want to be thinking organic, not paid, think library, not publication, think user personas, not buyer personas, think topic clusters, not keywords, and most importantly, think strategically, not tactically. So this is so important. So before you do anything, really think, why are you doing something and what approach you're going to take? What is the plan before you then jump into the nitty gritty, going to keywordtool.io, doing your keyword research, building actual content pieces. So make sure you have a good strategy in place and then go in and execute tactically. So if you want to grab a copy of the slides, just head over to advancedb2b.com/PLG. There's a copy of the slides that you can download. And there's also a few links to additional resources, some of the things referenced in this talk, so that you can read a little bit more about content marketing and SEO to help you guys get started. And if you want to get in touch with me, so edward.ford@supermetrics.com, of course, Twitter @NordicEdward, get in touch on LinkedIn, and then of course go and check out advancedb2b.com as well, if you're looking for a partner as well to get started with content marketing or any other growth marketing activities within B2B and SaaS. So that was everything for me. So I would just like to thank you guys, or as we say over here in Finland, kiitos, and enjoy the rest of the sessions at Product Led Summit.